this right here. Now, this is exactly why I love Superman and Lois, because they take things that you know, or at least think you know, and kind of flip them on their heads. Because remember last season, with John Henry Irons, we thought he was like, oh, Lex Luthor from a different Earth. Then boom, all of a sudden, wait, no, this is John Henry Irons, aka Steel, from the comics. And now they've done that same exact thing here again with Doomsday, which I think is even better than what we thought they were doing. But guys, without getting too much further into it, today we are talking about, of course, Superman and Lois Season 2, Episode 3. Things are going down in this season. I'm so happy to talk about it. So of course, spoiler warning if you've seen that, again, Superman and Lois Season 2, Episode 3. But we got some big stuff to talk about here in this episode. So first of all, when we start off the episode, Superman is just flying through the air trying to, figure out what's going on here. He's scoping out the premises. And all of a sudden, he starts getting those visions again as he gets closer to the mine. And then he crashes. So he is trying to figure out the connection between his visions and the thing that is in the mines. And so Lois actually calls her father, of course, Sam Lane, to actually get some clearance for the mines. So they do that. Sam brings some clearance and is able to get John Henry Irons into the mines so that he can do some investigating, find out what is inside the mines and how much longer they have before it breaks out, which, spoiler alert, they didn't even have time to figure that part out because it just broke out. But before we get into talking about that, let's talk about the Kent boys here in this episode, of course, following up on their own individual storylines. Like, for example, Jonathan, who finds out that Timmy, kind of his rival at school, who is the actual quarterback for the team. Of course, Jonathan is like the backup quarterback, and he's like super jealous of him. And last week's episode, he was thinking like, oh, he's got to be taking steroids because he's like all juiced up and everything. But in this episode, he finds out that no, it's not steroids. It's actually probably even worse than that, because he's taking some sort of drug that's like a crystal that only grows in Smallville, and it is making him stronger. And so this, of course, is most likely X-Kryptonite, which was a big thing in Season 1, and this is kryptonite that gives people superpowers. So this seems to be what Timmy is taking, and this is how he's getting all juiced up and everything. But as we find out in the middle of the episode, when Jonathan actually confronts Timmy about this, he reveals that Candace, Jonathan's girlfriend, or at least new girlfriend for this season, is the one that supplied him with it. So, of course, it's at this time when Jonathan just gets mad, tackles him, and beats him up. And then Clark, of course, he's the, assistant coach, so he gets involved. But throughout this episode, Clark is actually, losing control of his powers. All of a sudden, he gets, over-tempered, and, his... he gets extra mad, and his laser eyes almost start going off. And he's, really going through it in this episode. And at least when it comes to Jonathan, at the end of this episode where his storyline is left off, is that he not only confronts Candace about this and fully says, I don't have a problem with this, but give me some. I need you to sell me some. So this is interesting because there's a couple different ways that this could go. Either he actually wants them so that he can get juiced up and have powers like his brother or something like that. Or he's just trying to get them so that he can investigate and kind of figure out what's going on here with this whole case. So, of course, I'm excited to see where things go from there. But then we've also got Jordan in this episode, who, of course, had a devastating ending in last week's episode with Sarah revealing to him that she not only kissed someone at camp, but it was a girl. And so he doesn't really know how to feel at this point. But he's kind of making some rash decisions, and he wants to tell her about his powers and about Superman and all that stuff. So he and Clark get into an argument, and again, Clark almost loses control, almost lasers Jordan. And so we've got a lot of back and forth throughout this episode with Jordan about what he's going to do about the situation. But by the end of it, Clark actually helps him come up with a solution, and Jordan actually gives Sarah this necklace that his grandfather gave to his grandmother when they first realized that they wanted to be together for forever and all that stuff. And so now they are I mean, they were never untogether, but they're, I guess, back together, and they're officially staying together. So we had a terrible ending for that couple in last week's episode. Now we have a happy ending here, which I'm very happy for them. I'm glad they could get past this. But then, like I said, we are still dealing with the thing in the mines, which is actually the title of this episode, The Thing in the Mines, because Clark actually gets the feeling that it's breaking out, because we actually find out in this episode that Clark not only is getting visions and connections to this thing that's in the mines, but the reason he keeps losing control and having these anger issues in this episode is because he's also feeling the same thing that this creature in the mines is also feeling. So he gets the sense that the creature is breaking out, so he of course rushes on over to the mines, and Doomsday has officially broken out, and you see the kind of comics accurate suit with like the green and everything. And I gotta be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this design. It did look kind of weird and like bulky, and I don't know, there was just something off about it. You get some great Superman versus Doomsday here, or at least Superman versus Mystery Kryptonian. And then, of course, John Henry Irons gets suited up as Steel. I love how he has kind of an Iron Man moment here where he can actually summon the Steel suit where he was at the Kent farm, and then he kind of like ordered it to fly there, and then it, latched onto him piece by piece. I thought that was cool to see. But during this battle, during all the chaos, as I theorize, part of the helmet is punched off, and you get to see a bit of Doomsday's face exposed, but it's not at all what we were expecting. At first, I didn't understand what it was. I thought it was just a really cheap, crappy design for Doomsday, and I was not at all happy. I was actually super disappointed with this reveal. But then it's after this, with the conversation with Clark and the family, where Clark says, "That is me," or at least a version of me. So this is an evil Kal-El. Bizarro, maybe, as we actually see at the end of the episode. We'll talk about that when we get there. But this was such a cool reveal that I was not expecting, because again, it didn't make sense at first. I thought it was just a terrible design for Doomsday. But no, that is actually an evil Kal-El, and I'm very, very excited to see this. But speaking of Steel, though, when he gets back home, Natalie decides that she wants to help her father repair and upgrade the Steel suit. She wants to get back involved with that because, of course, on their Earth, she actually helped build that when they were trying to fight the evil Superman of that Earth. So that's cool that we're getting some more father-daughter bonding there, because they definitely need that little extra bit of help in the relationship. But what's even more interesting here, though, is the storyline that's being set up with Lois Lane, because we, of course, got some hints toward this in last week's episode with her sister, Lucy Lane, who we know is returning from the character's appearance in Supergirl. And so now we find out actually a little bit more about this, that Lucy was involved with Ali Olliston, which basically seems like that this was some sort of cult thing that she was dealing with. And so Sam has actually organized a meeting between Lucy and Lois. But when Lois goes to this meeting at the diner, Lucy does not show up. Instead, Ali shows up. And that is kind of the big cliffhanger there for that storyline, because now we get to find out more about Ali, and that's just not good. Like, what is going on with Lucy as well? Like, is she actually like deeply involved with this cult stuff? Is she like actually not a good person? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the big ending cliffhanger, which is my favorite part of this episode, is we have Doomsday / Bizarro going back to the Fortress of Solitude, taking off this Doomsday suit and revealing to be not only an evil version of Kal-El, but specifically Bizarro. I mean, you've got the comics accurate suit. The lighting, it's hard to tell. I couldn't really tell if it was like the actual purple suit from the comics. Based off the promo for next week's episode, I believe it is actually red and blue like the regular Superman suit. But I am hoping that we do get the purple suit at some point in the series, because that would be so awesome. Especially considering the way that Tyler Hoechlin's Superman suit looks in the series with like the bright red and yellow and everything. I'd love to see that done in purple with the Bizarro suit, except with, the backwards logo. And after this, actually, I love how when it flashes up the Superman and Lois logo is actually backwards. That was awesome to see as well. Also, his cape is like ripped and stuff. So I'm loving this. I really am loving this big reveal that it's not Doomsday, but instead Bizarro, or possibly at least an amalgamation of the two characters, which I think is even better, because, obviously I thought it would be cool to see Doomsday in this, but at the same time I never really loved the idea, especially considering Doomsday. Doomsday is kind of a character we've had a lot in live action. I mean, we had him in the movies with Batman v Superman, which really was not a good version of the character, but we still had him there. We had a great version of the character in Krypton. There was honestly a fairly good version of the character in Smallville, just a terrible Power Rangers villain looking design, but I mean, hey, it was the early 2000s. They did the best they could. So we've had a lot of Doomsday in live action, but when it comes to Bizarro, we haven't. We have a really low-budget version from the original Superboy live-action TV series from like the 60s or 70s, which was literally just a guy in makeup. We have a version of Bizarro from Smallville, which wasn't really even Bizarro. I don't remember exactly what it was, if it was like just a different Superman from like a different Earth in the multiverse or something along those lines. I don't remember the exacts of it, but it wasn't really an accurate Bizarro. Plus, literally the only thing that made him different, like he didn't actually wear a Bizarro costume or anything. It was just like his face, like kind of looked like puzzle pieces. But this design looks great. I am loving this design for Bizarro in the Arrowverse, in Superman and Lois. I think this is great. Bizarro is one of my favorite Superman villains, so to see him in live action and with a great design like this, I'm loving it. And again, it does look like this is going to be the more red and blue suit, but I am definitely hoping that at least by the end of the season that we do get full-on purple Bizarro, because that would just be a dream come true. But guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. What did you think about Superman and Lois Season 2, Episode 3, and what did you think about the big reveal of Bizarro Doomsday? So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything